back like we never left. It's Double Move Sports. Y'all know who it is. As always, I'm Stef. I'm here with the fantasy phenom, Alex Lott. And today we're getting into players that you didn't know. Should you believe the hype? Is it just a flash in the pan? Is this rest of season? These guys that are playing well, can they maintain it? Alex, we got some loaded bye weeks this week. Bills, Cowboys, Vikings, Steelers, Chargers, Jaguars.
It's time for a hype check. I mean, we're 6 weeks in. We have a pretty good sample size for some of these guys. So now it's really time to start moving our chess pieces around and deciding which ones are for real and which ones aren't, because a lot of the names we go through are pretty polarizing. It's pretty tough to tell which ones are going to project forward for the rest of the seasons and which ones are going to fizzle out. And that's the thing about fantasy football. Like, you can't go back and get the points from weeks 1 through 6. You can only project forward. So we got some really interesting names to get into today. Also super timely with it being a bye week. A lot of these guys are now being inserted into starting lineups rather than just being bench stashes. So I'm hyped to get into some of these names, Steph.
If you guys like what we do here on the show, a like and a sub on YouTube. Greatly appreciated. As always, you can hop in the Discord channel with us. Link in the description down below. And we're going to start with our Discord question of the day from our people rocking with us. Just before Monday night, I was doing roster reviews, talking trades, talking player values, talking about who some of the guys wanted to see us break down on today's show. So definitely join that Discord if you want to join the conversation. But the question is, what do you do with Myles Gaskin? You know, it's a guy that, Alex, you and I have had him on our rosters throughout the year. Thankfully, both of us have sold because I think we saw the writing on the wall. Goes from a 0-point game to a 31-point game against Tampa Bay when probably nobody started him. And then another disappointing outing in Week 6 against the Jaguars in London. He's clearly in a 3-way timeshare, but what are we, like, is Gaskin just done? Is he going to be putting up zeros the rest of the year? Is he droppable?
He's definitely not done. He's definitely not droppable. I think right now you got to hold him and wait for that next explosion game. He's kind of like a Nyheim Hines plus in the sense that, like, if I had to break down who the lead back was in this backfield, I'd still pick Gaskin, but that does not mean he's getting all the work. He is still that receiving back. If you look at his game log this season, outside of the weird Week 4 game, he's had 5 or more targets in each game. So in these PPR leagues, he is going to have games where he is relevant. So if you got him, I think you wait until that next game where he has at least a solid game. And at that point, I would do everything in my power to sell, trade him straight up, package him with somebody else to upgrade. But you got to wait until his value's there. If you did it last week, congratulations, props to you, because that's when his value is probably the highest it's going to be this season. There was an entire, like, Myles Gaskin is back narrative. At this point, though, we have enough of a sample to say, okay, he's probably just going to be volatile throughout the rest of the year, and we don't know whether we can trust him or not on a week-in or week-out basis. So I'm holding until he has another solid week, and then I'm just trying to get rid of him because, look, he is going to have those weeks, but if you don't know when it's going to be, it just adds a lot of risk to your lineup.
100%. And we're seeing in the Gaskin situation kind of what we've seen from Ronald Jones over the last couple of seasons where, you know, in this game against the Jaguars, he fumbles early, his snap share gets diminished, he's kind of coming out slow to start the game off, gets 5 carries only for 9 yards. He had the 6 targets, which was great to see, just wasn't his day. So you add in the fact that he was just kind of out of rhythm. Maybe that's with Tua coming back, the quarterback changed something there. We like Gaskin as a player, but with this usage, maybe unless Salvon Ahmed or Malcolm Brown go down, then Gaskin becomes somebody you can actually consider starting on a weekly basis. But until that happens, stick with the plan that you laid out. Now let's talk about these players that we need to know. Can we believe the hype? Can these players maintain production rest of the season? And number one on this list, I'm so excited to get into it. This is one of the weirdest, like, comeback narratives we've seen in a minute. We have 30-year-old Cordarrelle Patterson as a RB1 in fantasy football in 2021. Right now sitting as the RB10. Already had his bye week and still is the RB10. Before that, I want to say he was top 5. Right now seeing 6 targets a game, 8 carries a game, continuing to be the explosive guy that we've always seen him be, whether it was on kickoff returns, whether it was being used as a check down running back in Chicago. Right now, if you look at Patterson, he's third amongst running backs with 31 targets, and third in PPR points per game. So he's been the steal of the year. Alex, in my mind, this is maintainable because of Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan is showing that the Drew Brees, Big Ben, older wear and tear on a pocket passer means they're going to check down to the running back. Phillip Rivers, another perfect example of this. Right now, you also have Mike Davis in that Falcons backfield, 8th in running back targets. So for Matt Ryan to sustain 2 top 8 running backs in targets, I think we're going to see a lot more of the same. And Cordarrelle Patterson, with the way he's playing right now, the touchdown volume that he's seeing, and the amount of targets that he's getting, we don't need him to have double-digit carries every single week. And right now, he's only averaging 8 carries a game.
I agree with you there. For the first several weeks, it was kind of like, well, Cordarrelle Patterson is putting up this hyper-efficient production with all these touchdowns and all these receptions, but he's only playing a third of the snaps. So can he maintain it? And it was like he's either going to fall off from an efficiency standpoint or his snap share is going to have to go up. And if you do look at week 5, I know Ridley was out for that game, but Patterson played 59% of snaps, by far his highest of the season. And in that game, 14 carries and 9 targets. So the usage just continues to go up for Patterson. So I think this is absolutely sustainable. He's giving you a really high floor, and they're utilizing him in really good ways. And he's been good as well. He just passes the eye test. He's getting it done, not only on the stat sheet, not only in the efficiency, but the dude just looks good. So we are seeing that rare kick returner turned 9th-year breakout hybrid wide receiver / running back. I think we're in uncharted territory with Cordarrelle Patterson. And when you think about the opportunity that he walked into, I mean, we looked at Julio Jones getting traded and we said, okay, somebody's got to take over some of those vacated targets. We look at Todd Gurley and the rest of that crew in the backfield moving out of Atlanta, and we say, okay, somebody's got to take over some of those carries. It's like, yeah, Mike Davis is going to take a big chunk at the running back spot. Yeah, Kyle Pitts is going to take a big chunk at, tight end as a pass catcher. But Cordarrelle Patterson is double dipping into both right now. He's getting some of that running back workload. He's getting some of that wide receiver workload. And they're straight up featuring him in this offense. So he's been more explosive than Mike Davis. He's been a better player than Mike Davis. And I think Cordarrelle Patterson, by all means, no, he's not going to be, in my opinion, a top 10 running back for the rest of the season. But can he be top 15-ish, at least, absolute floor, top 20 in these PPR leagues? Absolutely.
Yeah, if it wasn't for the consistent volume, we'd be a lot more scared of Patterson. And that's why he was a sell high for us, because of that limited snap share. He's just not on the field that much. But when he is on the field, not only is he commanding the volume, he's doing crazy things with the ball in his hands. Right now, leading amongst all running backs in yards per touch, number 2 in yards per reception, number 2 in yards per route run. So he is on the field in 2-minute situations, on third down and long situations, has a 15% target share, which is 6th amongst running backs. So not much more you can ask for. This is why you got to love, and this is why we always love, the pass-catching running backs like Chase Edmonds, Austin Eckler, Alvin Kamara is the extreme version of this, Aaron Jones, DeAndre Swift, the list goes on. We love these pass-catching backs because they don't have to do quite as much on the ground to maintain that efficiency, that usage, and that fantasy point floor in PPR. But let's talk about another Atlanta Falcon, and it's Kyle Pitts. After the breakout we saw, granted it was against the Jets, granted it was in London, but 10 targets, caught 9 of them for 119 yards and a touchdown, a 27 fantasy point outing. And in the game before that, saw 9 targets. So Kyle Pitts is getting volume over the last 2 weeks. We know this tight end landscape is absolutely brutal. They go into Miami this week, which I'm not expecting that to be the highest scoring game, but I think Pitts can get it done. So if you drafted Pitts, you're starting him every week. Do you think, though, we can expect for things to get better than it was maybe the first 4 weeks of the season?
Yeah, honestly, I think the week 5 game is closer to where we're going to see Pitts for the rest of the season than weeks 1 through 4. And no, I don't think he's going for 100 yards and a touchdown every single game, but he's been getting the targets. He's seen an average of 7 targets a game so far this season. And we already know that Kyle Pitts is this truly generational athlete at the tight end position, highest drafted tight end of all time. The first time that a non-quarterback, the first non-quarterback off the board in the draft was a tight end, had all the hype coming out of Florida. So we know Pitts is that dude from a talent perspective, and the opportunity, the volume's actually been there through 5 games. And in that week 5 matchup, we finally saw it translate to the stat sheet, to production, and to fantasy football. So no, I don't think he's putting up, 25 fantasy points a game for the rest of the season. But I expect that opportunity share to continue to be there for Kyle Pitts. He's featured in this offense. He's on the field a ton. Hayden Hurst is still involved here and there, but Pitts by all means is that featured tight end, and they're splitting him out wide just like we thought they would. So to me, Kyle Pitts is an elite tight end option for the rest of the season. I think he's right where we thought he was going in. Honestly, I'd put him in the top 5 rest of year. To me, like it's Kelsey at 1. I think Waller has honestly entered like a tier of his own at number 2. And for me, that third tier right now is Mark Andrews, Kyle Pitts, and TJ Hawkinson. Yeah, I left George Kittle off of that list. He would be next. We'll see if he can bounce back. He's hurt, and he hasn't flashed at all this year. So to me, like he's a top 5 tight end rest of season. And I would take Kyle Pitts over George Kittle the rest of the way.
I love the spice with these takes. I remember when Pitts got drafted, you put it on wax. You said Kyle Pitts is going to have double-digit touchdowns as a rookie tight end. I thought you were absolutely...
He's got some work to do.
Absolutely crazy. He does have 1 touchdown, but, hey, extended season. Maybe he has time to get there. He has a 22% red zone target share, which is phenomenal. And not only is he getting downfield targets, he's also making things happen after the catch, getting those targets in the red zone. Number 6 right now in yards per reception. So he's being efficient. He's being everything that we expected him to be. Now let's talk about a wide receiver, not on the Falcons. We'll move away from the Falcons for a bit. Henry Ruggs. Henry Ruggs has been absolutely balling out this year. I know you've been a fan for a good bit. It looks like he's bringing down more of those deep targets that turn into touchdowns. The Raiders' offense is putting up a little bit more yards than they typically do. Derek Carr has looked good for the most part, better than he has over previous seasons. Are you in on Henry Ruggs, and is he a reliable flex option?
I have loved what I've seen from Henry Ruggs so far this season. And for those of you watching that don't know, during the offseason, there was a time when I refused to record a podcast with Stef until he let me share my screen and show him Henry Ruggs highlights. Now, I will say, for his rookie season, there weren't a ton, but this dude was making plays out there. So I'm glad I got some stuff in the log for this offseason. We're looking for things to talk about because Ruggs, I mean, he's flashed so far this season. No, he hasn't been this super hyper consistent, hyper targeted fantasy football option, but he's finally translated from an efficiency standpoint. The targets are still a bit low, only 32 targets through 6 games this season. So he's doing this off of a little over 5 targets per game, but he's posted that pop play that we know Henry Ruggs can post several times this year. In week 2, he had 5 for 113 and a touchdown. Week 6, 3 for 97 and a touchdown. Had another game where he had, 4 receptions for 78 yards. So Henry Ruggs is a core piece of this offense. Derek Carr has been absolutely balling so far. I know he's had a down game here or there, but to me, I still did believe in the talent of Henry Ruggs going into the season. Now that he's taken a stranglehold of that number 1 wide receiver role on the Las Vegas Raiders, I think we're going to continue to see him be productive. I will say he is a little bit boomer bust because he is doing this on a small target share. But for Henry Ruggs, you look at the schedule. He's got Philly in week 7 and the bye in week 8. But down the stretch, he has the Giants, Chiefs, Bengals, Cowboys, Washington, and then the Chiefs again. So coming out of that bye, we could see a stretch where you have other receivers going through bye weeks. You're in these deeper leagues, these 2 wide receiver leagues. He's that perfect guy to throw in to that wide receiver 3 spot, that flex spot, and hope for the big boom play from Derek Carr.
I am getting 2019, 2020 Marquise Brown vibes with Henry Ruggs, and it's because of the volume. Only a 15% target share, only 4% in the red zone. That's just obviously not how he's used as a player. He is truly a field stretcher in every sense of the word. I don't even see him as a field stretcher plus. He's a top tier field stretcher. I'll give him that, but the target share is the concern for me. But nonetheless, even with Hollywood Brown, and I've been a proponent of Hollywood Brown, and we're going to talk about him here in a minute because he's on a tear as well. These guys, especially in deeper leagues, are perfect flexes. You lean in to that boom bust nature. You enjoy the boom weeks, especially in a 14-team league, maybe keeper leagues where you see all the good players essentially off the board, and you're scraping the bottom of the barrel. Maybe leagues with deep benches. He's definitely a guy that needs to be on rosters so you can keep around and then play him in the right matchup where you think he is going to get that deep ball. What is encouraging is that the Raiders are top 10 in pass plays per game. If we see that go up at all, I think Ruggs is going to be a direct benefactor. Right now, he's 3rd in deep targets, number 2 against all wide receivers in average target distance, top 10 in completed air yards. He's doing the things that he was drafted to do for the Raiders. And so it's great for them to see their draft pick play out when it was a very, very controversial pick, taking Ruggs over Judy and Lamb and a bunch of other really good players that were on the board at other positions. But Ruggs definitely enters that mid-tier flex range, a weekly wide receiver 3, that unless you have better options, you're putting him in your lineup. Hey guys, real quick, I got to tell you all about a new sports betting software called OddsJam. They use real-time data to spot discrepancies between different sports books to help their users place risk-free bets. Profits average around 3% every day, which adds up to big earnings. If it sounds too good to be true, let me show you how it works. Sometimes the odds in different sports books don't line up with one another. When this happens, you can bet on different outcomes to a single game with different sports books and win no matter what. This is called arbitrage. OddsJam processes over 1 million odds a minute and identifies arbitrage opportunities in real time. Developed by Alex Monahan, an engineer from Stanford that started his career as a trader on Wall Street, OddsJam is an innovative solution designed to identify odds that make you a winner every time. You can check out his video in the link below where he breaks down how he made over $400,000 using the OddsJam software that he built. With OddsJam, there's no catch, just the smartest betting software on the market. Check them out at oddsjam.com and check out some of their free line shopping tools while you're there. Now back to the show.
A little bit deeper of a name, a guy who's popped over the past couple weeks, Khalil Herbert for the Chicago Bears. This is a rookie running back who, by matter of circumstance, has found himself with a pretty good workload over the past couple of weeks, really serving as the bell cow for the Chicago Bears team with David Montgomery on IR, with Damian Williams missing time because of being on the COVID list. So Stef, Khalil Herbert for Chicago. He's one of these guys where I've seen so many questions. Is he someone you should be selling? Is he someone you should be starting? And just about everything in between. So Stef, what are you doing with Khalil Herbert moving forward? And has he showed enough to carve out a permanent role in this Bears offense?
He has been the guy who's benefited most from the Bears really being a run-first team, trying to win games with their defense, trying to keep a lid on Justin Fields, who looks like he's still adapting to the game to a degree. I think some of that is Matt Nagy holding him back because he's trying to coach for his job. We could get into Bears narratives all day long, but if you just look at Khalil Herbert, even if you add in the fact that Damian Williams is probably going to be back from the COVID list, David Montgomery might be healthy after the bye week, Khalil Herbert's next 3 matchups are not great ones. You have at Tampa Bay, San Francisco at home, and then they go on the road to Pittsburgh. So even if Khalil Herbert is the guy, I'm not expecting his efficiency to get better, right? 5.1 yards per carry against Green Bay. They are a team that you can run on. And we did see him get 3 targets. Now that usage is what's so encouraging. The 89% snap share was great. They weren't, really putting Ryan Null or Artavius Pierce into the picture. Tariq Cohen obviously on the pup, so he wasn't a factor. So I think Khalil Herbert's big week, and I was telling everybody in our Discord to fire him up, and he definitely delivered. But I think you either sell high if you can. You add in the fact he got the touchdown. It's not guaranteed, especially in this Bears offense that's not putting up points. He's a guy that you got to sell if you can, and if not, I think he's borderline droppable if he doesn't do anything over the next week or two.
Yeah, I think you definitely hold on until some of the other running backs get back. But to your point, he was good against Green Bay. He served his purpose. He's by all means a handcuffed back, where if Williams and Montgomery are out, you're always thinking about starting him. We have had all those questions in the Discord about, do you start him this week if Williams is out? And I do think as a volume play, you hope for the workload. You hope for a target or 2 against Tampa Bay. Sure, but the obstacles long-term are just it's such a big hill, such a large hill to climb. When you think about Damian Williams, you think about David Montgomery, he's going to be right back to being buried on this depth chart. So he's no more than a handcuff, and he's actually, 2 injuries away from being super fantasy relevant. So that's the big challenge with Herbert. And it's also really tough that this Bears team has struggled so much this season. I know Montgomery has been good. Williams even flashed when he's had opportunities. Khalil Herbert, we just mentioned, has been great. So for the Bears, the run game is where they want to go. They want to run the ball. They want to keep it out of Justin Fields' hands and make sure he's not throwing the ball 40 times a game. But with that being said, this offense has been brutal. Only 246 yards per game on offense. Last in the NFL. Think about that. 246 yards per game. Most quarterbacks are throwing for more than that in a game. And then they're 30th in points per game, only 16 points per game. So The volume upside isn't there. The touchdown upside isn't really there, even though he did get in last week. So I'm with you. Honestly, best case scenario for Herbert, you can sell him ahead of this week if Damian Williams is out, or even if Williams is in, maybe you can convince someone that Herbert's taken over that job until Montgomery comes back, likely after the bye, and you can get a season-long asset for a guy like Khalil Herbert.
Last guy on our list for today, Marquise Brown, sitting as the wide receiver 7 in PPR leagues. Had his worst game of the year, fantasy-wise. Did have a fumble, 6.5 fantasy points. But this was the first week that first-round rookie receiver Rashad Bateman back in the lineup, playing 65% of snaps, coming off core muscle surgery, and actually out-targeting Hollywood Brown. This was the player that the Ravens went out and drafted to be their stud wide receiver 1. During the offseason, you and I comped Rashad Bateman to Stephon Diggs, the way that he plays and the skill set that he has. I mean, if you put Stephon Diggs on the Ravens today, you're expecting Hollywood Brown to take a back seat. I know Bateman is a rookie, probably going to be up and down, just like any rookie is, but commanding a 26% target share, 6 targets, caught 4 of them for 29 yards, not a crazy stat line. Definitely weren't thrilled to start him in fantasy, but you see Hollywood Brown go from double-digit targets down to 5 targets, tied for his lowest on the season, doesn't get the touchdown. Hollywood Brown, do you believe the hype? Are you fading him now that Bateman's back in the picture?
I think Hollywood's a sell high, but I don't necessarily think it's because Bateman's in the picture, as odd as that is. I think Hollywood's a sell high because he has over-indexed in touchdowns so far this season, and I do think he is going to be more valuable the rest of the way than where he was drafted. So if you took him expecting like this wide receiver 3 flex play, I think he is probably a wide receiver 2 with those boom weeks that are coming the rest of the way. He is, the wide receiver 7 so far. I don't expect him to maintain that. But when I think about this offense, we've just seen Lamar Jackson throwing the ball way more this year than we have in the past. He's averaging 7 more attempts per game so far than he did in 2020, and it's been a function of some of these shootouts, some of these game scripts that he has gotten himself into. You think about the game against the Colts, where they had to come from behind, and he threw the ball, 43 times. You think about week 1 against Vegas, threw it 30 times, against Denver, 37 times. So they're throwing the ball a little bit more. Some of that's because the running backs are out. Some of it's just because of the game scripts, and I do expect that to change. But the reason I'm not as concerned about Bateman, while I do think he's a supreme talent to guys like Sammy Watkins, is because Sammy Watkins, before he got hurt, listen to these targets. In week 1, 8 targets. And then in weeks 2, 3, and 4, 7 targets, 7 targets, 7 targets. So like Sammy Watkins was getting the targets in this offense. And if you really just shift that target share over to a guy like a Rashad Bateman, Bateman's probably going to be better with those targets, more efficient. We're going to see him make more plays. But I don't necessarily think that's the reason we're going to see Hollywood's target share suddenly get diminished. So maybe you can kind of draw up that narrative that things are going to kind of shift the other way, and it's going to be more of a 1A, 1B situation. But if anything, I think Hollywood's just going to be restricted by not having that touchdown upside every single game. So Hollywood, you just have to kind of reframe your expectations the rest of the way. He's a wide receiver 2 for me, probably a low-end wide receiver 2. And if you can sell high and cash in on someone who has more guaranteed volume, by all means, I absolutely would do that at this point in the season.
Love that take there, and you're right. It's not directly attributable to Rashad Bateman. And with Hollywood Brown, hopefully adding Bateman on the outside and then the more the intermediate short area of the field allows Hollywood Brown to go deeper on more of these receptions. That way Lamar can hit him when the defense breaks down. We could see more of the same from Hollywood Brown. I'm not going to say it's a high probability, but you're right. I don't think Bateman coming in is necessarily a death sentence for Hollywood Brown. Still super young, still super explosive, and still hyper efficient, as we've seen with him putting up wide receiver 1 fantasy football numbers. But that's it for today's episode, guys. If you like what we do here on the show, again, a like and a sub on YouTube, greatly appreciated. Hit that Discord link in the description down below, and we'll see y'all next time.
Peace.